There we go. Hello, everyone, and welcome to my new show, Out of Nowhere. Well, we talk about the strange, the paranormal, cryptids, all different sorts of things. What's happening around the world? My guest today is Mark Munsey. Mark is an author of the paranormal history, horror, and science fiction. He has spent more than 3 decades collecting ghostly tales and reports of legendary beasts. Can we please welcome Mark to the show? Hello there, Mark.
Hi, gang. Good to be here.
Thank you for coming on the show. Tell us, for the listeners, tell us a little bit about yourself.
I started as an enthusiast as a child. I had a couple paranormal encounters in the early 70s in my childhood home that just didn't make sense to me. I grew up in the mountains of Appalachia and had some other kind of unusual encounters there. So I was always drawn to folklore and legends and all that. Um, Child of the 70s. So, of course, science fiction, Star Wars, horror was everything. And then put all that away, became a dad as I was writing, and then opened my own haunted attraction in St. Petersburg, Florida, that was for charity. I let people come through my haunted house in my backyard, and
Oh,
it was all themed around local lore and legends because I still had that drive and these stories were still fascinating to me. And we ran that for about 2 decades. My kids grew up, and then the city of St. Petersburg, Florida, shut us down. We were a little too popular. We had
oh,
by the end we had about 10,000 people a weekend going through my backyard. And
God.
when that happened, they were like, "Oh my gosh, what about all these?" I was like, "What am I going to do with all these stories?" Because instead of having the werewolf jump out at you, I had the skunk ape jump out at you. Instead of some vampire, I had some characters from Tampa Bay folklore. So I had all these stories. So I started publishing them, and I got picked up by History Press, and that became Erie, Florida, my first national bestseller. And then that led to Freaky Florida, where we got to do more off the beaten path, lesser known stuff. They finally let me out of the Florida after 3 best-selling books, and I got to do Erie, Appalachia in 2020, where we went up and down the Appalachian Trail. And now I've been on documentaries, TV shows, and now I run my own. I co-host a podcast called Erie Travels, and we go all over the world now doing this. So
Yeah. Um, yeah, tell us a bit about skunk ape. Has there been a lot of sightings of it?
yeah, it's basically what happens is if everything comes to Florida, it has to get a dumb name. We have a beast in Florida that's there's a river monster in Georgia. It's called Allahatmaha, the
Oh
beast of
my
the
God.
Allahatma River. And when it comes to the St. Johns River, it becomes the St. Johns River beast. But then when it gets into Florida, we call it Pinky because it's the color of boiled shrimp. And that's the same thing with Bigfoot and Sasquatch and Yeti. Everywhere else gets these awesome names. In Florida, he's a big hairy thing, and he lives in the swamps. He smells bad, so they call him the swamp ape or the skunk ape, and that's where he gets his name. So,
Have you
but
have you seen a Bigfoot yourself then?
I have not. I've seen some other unusual things in my time. I am a paranormal journalist, I like to call it. I like to go out with the Bigfoot hunting teams, the ghost hunting teams, the UFO hunting teams. I'm not really one of those guys. I don't do it. I'm there to get their story and their experiences. But because I've been with them, I've talked to so many witnesses. I interviewed tons of witnesses and all these hunters, and I get their stories. And I've got to say, there's something out there because so many weird things. Now, I have seen tracks that were not supposed to be there. I was on a weird expedition. I was in the Mayaca State Forest, which is a lot of swamp just south of Tampa Bay,
Yeah.
and a lot of people don't realize how big some of these forests are in Florida. Everybody just thinks it's all beaches. No, there's a lot of nothing. And I was there because a couple of truck drivers had emailed us saying they'd seen a flying humanoid or a Mothman like figure in the area. And then I got reports that some campers had seen it. And now I was going because I was thinking, it's probably a cormorant, which is a bird that flies in that area, looks like a gargoyle a little bit in flight. So I was thinking that's probably what they saw, is like a big one. And so I was out there trying to find that. And I teamed up with a local Bigfoot hunter in that area, Stacy Brown from Finding Bigfoot. And I said, hey, I need to get to this campsite. I don't know how to get there. I need somebody to lead me. And so he's like, yeah, we'll take you. He got me one of his people from his team, Outcast Paranormal, and they start walking me out there. And we're in the middle of nowhere in a swamp. And he's like, okay, let's take this shortcut, because otherwise we got to go through 2 miles of swamp. And I'm a 50-year-old man with epilepsy. I don't need to be walking in the swamp longer than I have to. So we take this shortcut and we're going along the creek there, and there's tracks and Bigfoot tracks. So neither of us were like expecting that. And we were, oh my gosh. So he's on the phone with Stacy saying, we got to get down here. We got to get casts and all that. I'm like, we'll come back. I got to get to this campsite and talk to these other people, but this is amazing. We'll document it. We GPSed it and everything. So it was pretty, I took some pictures, and then we went, interviewed the people, came back the next day when he's getting his Bigfoot team out there to go explore. The state of Florida suddenly did a controlled burn in that area, and it was all gone. So, which a controlled burn is where they burn the underbrush. So wildfires don't happen. And kind of odd that suddenly, after we're looking into that, there was no record of it happening. There was no warning about it going to happen. And then they did it. So, conspiracy theory head.
Yeah, yeah. When you're writing ghost stories and for your books, how did you narrow down which one we're going to be in which book?
Yeah, that's always the thing, because everybody's like, oh, you saw there's a shadowy figure there. There's a lady in white over here. There's a little kid ghost over there. And after a little while, they all just kind of blur together. But with me, it was very much more than one person has to have seen it. It has to. And then second was, and they need to be independent. It can't just be, 2 people, same family saw it or something. And the second thing was, it had to be publicly accessible. I didn't want to put anything in the book that was like private residence or an abandoned house that's private property that, you could get hurt going to and all that. So that narrows down the list considerably from how many stories you have. And then the other thing was, I wanted to put in places that were a little more unique, right? Things that stood out a little more. And also had some history. I like to tie it in. I'm a historian by nature, degree in history. So I wanted to do that. So it was, I wanted to make sure there was a tie to it. If it's just some random lady in white, it had to have some reason to be there. That's what I look for.
Yeah, I agree with you there as well. It's same in the UK, and it dates back to Victorian times. Somebody might have seen something and chase it back to Victorian time and try and find out if there's anything being cited from then.
Yeah. We have one ghost that I put in one of the books because it didn't make sense, and that actually intrigued me too, because I do like sometimes when the mystery is weirder than the ghost. And there was a place in Clearwater, Florida, that was called Boatyard Village. It was built to look like a turn of the century fishing village, but it was built in the 1970s. And before that, it was swamp. It was just swamp. And they had a theater in there, and the theater had a ghost. And it was a Victorian lady who would walk across the stage, and they didn't know who she was. They didn't know anything about her, and didn't make sense because they'd never done a Victorian production in that stage. The theater was built in the 1970s. There's no Victorian history in this area. The theater had a major fire around early 2000s, and they finally bulldozed it. It's now just swampland again. And I thought that'd be the end of the story. But then kayakers in the area still see her ghost walking around the former area of the theater. She's got like a parasol. She's got the white Victorian gown, and people are kayaking in sunny Florida going, what is that? And broad daylight. And so I had to put her in the book because what a cool story, right? So she
Yeah,
was
but
in.
when you talk about it, what is a ghost then?
That's the question. That's the $1 million question, right? It's the when you talk to the hunters, they classify them in different levels. It's not like Ghostbusters where it's a class 5 full roaming vapor and all that. No, they have like residual hauntings, which is something that's just repeating itself, doing the same thing. A stone tape theory, that Nigel Keel did over there,
Yeah.
where it's just something's repeating, and you can't interact with it, you can't change it, it just happens. Sometimes it happens more often than others. Then there's the second type, which seems to be a bit more interactive, where they'll talk to you, they'll interact, they'll move things around. And then, of course, you've got classic poltergeist, where it doesn't make sense. Things are going crazy, things are moving around, and unusual things. But even then, I think if you study these, you find patterns, you find repetition. And then, with all that, that's where I think it all boils down to, is where if we could study this, if we could get legitimate science to talk about it, we'd find more. And the problem is there's no money in that yet. There's no money in that research yet. And that's exactly what happens. It's, to this day, it's like chiropractic medicine's my one I like to point out, because a lot of medical schools, that's still voodoo. That's not real medicine. There's no official thing saying cracking your bones cures anything. But there are people who get genuine relief from it. People, it really helps.
You're saying that I went to see a psychic surgeon 4 weeks ago because of my pain. Oh God, yeah, it did,
See?
yeah.
And that's we talked to Reiki healers on our podcast, and one lady was insistent that she had fallen and knew she'd broken a bone in her leg, and she was miles from help. She called for help, but who knew when it was coming and all that. So she was just trying to use her Reiki training, just focus healing energy on it until help came. She got to the hospital. She's still like, I'm just focusing on it. And then when they went to check her, she was fine. Just a light bruise. And she's like, she knew she broke a leg. She couldn't move. She couldn't stand on it. And the paramedics are like treating her for a broken leg. But so did she do it? We don't know. But the power of the mind is a powerful thing. So.
Of course it is, yeah. Tell us about you growing up and what you saw when you were young.
Okay, well, my youngest childhood memory that started all this madness was at a home in Dayton, Ohio. I was up on a third floor of this old one of those old Sears houses. For a long time, you could order a house from Sears, and they would send you all the stuff, and people would build the house. My family bought it in the 70s and moved us in there. And I was on the third floor room, which leads up to the attic. And that was where I was. And I would go up to the attic to play. And my earliest memory, so I was like 6 or 7 years old. And I go up there, and I'm going up to the attic to my play area. And I saw what I would describe as a shadow figure now, this black, just dark shape sitting in the floor, bright lit attic. This isn't like a dark attic. This had lights and everything. And it was just sitting in the floor, and then it turned towards me with beady, glowing red eyes. I still get goosebumps talking about it 50 years later. And the next thing I remember is my mom rushing me down the stairs, holding me, going, "It's going to be okay. It's going to be okay." No idea what it was, anything. I've researched that house There've been bad things happen in that house. A guy got shot there breaking in. Some other things happened over the years, but none of it makes sense. My cryptid encounter is a family monster story. I love, as much as I love Bigfoot, as much as I love Loch Ness monsters and all that.
Yeah.
My favorite thing while I was doing Erie Appalachia was getting what I like to call holler monster stories. These are the stories you get from the Meemaws and Peepaws who live in the little, valleys in the mountains, and
Yeah.
they've got their family monster that's lived in the valley for generations, and they've got all these ghost stories and legends about it and stuff. And well, we had one where I grew up in Kentucky, right on the West Virginia border. There's a beast that roams the woods in that area, and it hurts bad people. That was the thing. So if you're a bad person, this thing's gonna hurt you. And what it was is it has the head of a man and the body of a big cat or a cow, a small cow. It's
All
depending on the
right.
story, and a wooden front leg, and it's called the bench leg. And it sounds like something out of South Park, right? It's just the silliest thing. And I had heard that story my whole life, thinking this is the dumbest thing I've ever heard, right? This thing jumping from tree to tree, head of a man with a wooden leg, doesn't make sense. But I was 13, 14, was going out in those woods late at night. We would hang out there, and I was always looking for UFOs at that point, because that's post Close Encounters, post Star Wars days, and didn't even think about that old monster. And something startled one of the horses in the field, and then the second horse ran by, and I knew there were only two horses in the field. And then I hear something else coming charging, and I'm thinking, okay, I know there's bears in these woods. I know there's some other stuff. What do I worry about? And I've got a little BB gun with me, and I'm like, if it's a bear, my little Red Ryder BB gun, I might shoot its eye out, but I'm a dead man. And but then I saw this weird thing run by that had a strange kind of glow around its head and looked like a big cat. And there are no big cats supposed to be in Kentucky like that. No panthers, no, maybe a bobcat, but this was bigger than that. And, it's now I know them as what they call ABCs, alien big cats, or, things that aren't supposed to be there. And you guys have those in the UK where
We have them, call them panthers, black panthers.
Yep.
I've seen one myself in 2017. Two of us seen it coming back from the bird sanctuary at Bempton and way back. We're too busy talking, so you've no chance of getting the camera out or anything.
No.
And we're going down, and because Paul's it's an old guy, he can't got a video on it, anything, unfortunately. And he goes, "What's that in front of the car? A bloody big black panther walking across the road. I reckon if it had been 10 seconds earlier, we'd have killed it. That's how close it was." And it walked straight across the road into the edge and vanished.
Yep. That was my thought with this thing. As it ran past, I'm like, afterwards, I realized what I'd seen, and I'm sitting there going, I realized every member of my family who grew up in that area had a story about it. And these were people who never lied about a thing in their life. So why would they make that up? And then I start putting two and together. I'm like, oh, I saw it too. So,
there's a question from Rebecca. During your investigation, have you or anyone experienced a hitchhiker effect?
Oh, yeah. Where things kind of follow you home. Yeah, that's sad. Sadly, yes. The worst of the worst. I did a documentary for the Travel Channel a few years ago on our good, wonderful friend Robert the Doll down in Key West. It was called Curse of Robert the Doll. And I got to hang out with Robert for quite a little while. I'd already written about him in Erie, Florida. I'd spent time with him. I know Robert's caretaker is a guy named David Sloan down in Key West, and I'm very familiar with him. And so we get down there and we're working with him, and they're filming him, and I'm making sure they're following all the rules. If you don't know who Robert the Doll is, he's one of those guys you've got to know the rules, right? You gotta don't make fun of him, don't say anything bad about him. If you take his picture, you always ask permission.
Mm.
And then the last thing is always, if you say goodbye to Robert, break the connection. And we did all this. We had a stunt Robert. It was made by the Jim Henson Company. It's epic production. We were in the original artist house where it all went down and everything. And we did all that. Everything was great. Show went fantastic. I get home. The week after I get home, both of my children are living on different sides of Florida. Both of them were in car accidents and almost die. And then I'm in a car accident and almost die. Now it's Florida that happens, but yeah, it's just one of those things. So I wrote Robert a letter, because that's how you get out of jail with Robert, is you write him an apology letter. He gets 100 letters a month of people apologizing to him. That's how real he is. So I wrote him a letter. So Robert, I'm sorry. I don't know what I did wrong, but I screwed up something. Please forgive me. And everything's been fine since. So,
oh my God.
But yeah, that's the curse of Robert the Doll is very, very real.
That must have been hard at that time. All three
man, worst couple weeks of my life. And that's, and the main problem is I'm under an NDA. I wasn't supposed to talk about dealing with Robert the Doll at all at that time, because the documentary wasn't airing for months, and I couldn't tell anybody, all right, kids, hey, it might be best if you write letters to Robert the Doll. I wrote an all-encompassing one, but it was just, that's one of those weird things. I know now, don't poke the bear. And I realized I'd forgotten one of the rules. I forgot to say goodbye when I left. So that's
yeah, a good friend of mine had a hitchhiker effect. It followed him home. Unfortunately, he's passed away about 2 months ago. Derek, a good friend of mine. He was told not to go to this to Redmondson Forest. Psychic medium said, whatever happens, don't go this weekend, Derek. Don't want you to go. I can feel as though something's going to happen. Anyway, a friend of his had travelled something like 4 hours to get to see him. He went, take me down there tonight, Derek. He said, oh, go on then. Anyway, they saw something in the wood and everything. And on the way back, got back home. His friend travelled back home. He was left on his own, Derek. He said, I've got to my computer and all something smacked back of my head, broke my nose on my computer, finished on the floor, unconscious, didn't wake up until morning. And his first thing when he woke up was, where's my dog? So he went to look for his dog, crawled around, found the dog in the bathroom, in the bath, whimpering and everything. He managed to get to the dog, get some help. And eventually he spoke with his medium friend. And she said, what did I say to you? Do not go. She said, I'm coming round now. I want to come round. I want to get rid of this bad energy. Yeah. What have you brought from the forest? And he had to go to hospital. What do you say to somebody when they say to you in the hospital, how have you done this then, Derek?
Okay. I poked a bear. That's all I usually have. That's what you got to say. I know, man, there's this house in Brooksville, Florida, that's super amazingly, one of those just incredible historical places to go visit, but also has a haunted history and all that. And that's called the May Stringer House. And it's the Hernando County Historical Society use it as a museum now. And they have several well-known spirits there. Up on the top floor is a famous one called Mr. Nasty. And he's mean to people when he gets up there. But on the second floor is a child ghost of some sort. And they think it's Jessie May, the little girl there. And paranormal teams line up for years to investigate this place because they get so much evidence there. And they all bring her toys to interact with. And she's, Victorian time. So they all bring her Victorian dolls to play with, and the museum starts accumulating these dolls because they leave them for her. And so, it's great. She's got tons of dolls to play with, but they started noticing it for a while there. After she would get a few of them, suddenly she wouldn't be as active anymore. And they started getting like meaner things happening. And they started realizing sometimes the dolls were bringing other things in.
Oh, yeah.
Right. So talk about hitchhiker effect. These dolls were bringing in things that were bullying the Jessie May spirit. So the museum they had psychics come in and say which dolls can stay, which dolls can go. And they have to do that frequently. And then what happens is they wind up every Halloween, they auction off the dolls to help support the house. And they put the notes from the psychics, what is attached to these dolls that they're not keeping because of reasons. And then they always wind up with a few leftovers that nobody wants, like they're too scary and stuff like that. Yeah. And what do? They go, hey, send that to Muncie. He'll take care of it and he'll find a home for it. So every November, I wind up having to go down to the May Stringer house and get a box of dolls.
I know we briefly spoke to you before the show. Like, what do your children think about when they come home to your house then? Because
they don't come. They don't come anymore. No, no, they visit when they can. But they're all like, Dad, no more dolls, please, no more dolls. I've got this one here behind me. She's a recent acquisition. Some German folk doll that was, and we haven't found a new home for her yet, so she's here. But so keep an eye on her back there. I don't. So far,
when you talk about all these dolls you have in your house, does any of them move around on the night?
Not really. Now this home we do have some spirit here that likes my books. I have a very big library here. If I'm panning the camera around, but she or he, we don't know. Every once in a while, we'll go on a trip for our Erie travels, researching a new book or researching the podcast or whatever. Again, I don't like to talk about any place I haven't been. I don't write about any place I haven't been to. So if I haven't been boots on the ground there, I'm not going to write about it. So that's one of the things is we make all these frequent trips. Plus, we make appearances at conventions and things like that. And when we're gone for a few days, it never seems to fail. One of my books somewhere in the house winds up like laying on the floor somewhere in the middle of a room. Nowhere.
Does it open at a certain page then?
No, it's just like the book just dropped. It's not open to any random pages or anything. And the random books, I have a lot of old sci-fi, a lot of old fantasy, stuff like that. And that seems to be the ghost preference. So that's nice. It doesn't dig into my wife's books on murder and true crime. So I'll get worried when that happens.
Okay, imagine when you investigate some of these cases, what's the most famous one or the one what sticks in your mind about a paranormal event? What's happened?
Oh gosh. Probably. Yeah, the most famous places I've been are, I've been to Waverly Hills. I've been to Castle Dracula. I've been to a lot of, infamous places all over the world. But I'd say the one that sticks with me the most is there's a place in, oh gosh, how to describe this place? It's called the Mushroom Mines. And it's in Kentucky. It's near Olive Hill, near Carter Caves area. So there's a lot of caves in that area, a lot of things like that.
Yeah.
But this was a limestone mine that got played out. And so in the 60s, 40s, 50s, and 60s, they came up with the idea this is a perfect place to grow mushrooms. Because it's old cave system. So they started growing mushrooms. They canned them for years until the market became all overseas importing mushrooms was cheaper than growing them in the middle of nowhere, Kentucky. So the mines got abandoned for decades. And in the 80s, famously, a few bodies were found in there because it was a good place to hide the bodies. It's literally 2 miles of old abandoned mine.
Oh my God.
Um, yeah. And so we went there. It's private property. You can't go to the front of it, and look at it. But we went there with a team. We were allowed permission from the owners of the time, and we got to go into it. And when we got deeper into these mines, it was crazy. Just some of the spooky stuff in an underground cave that's open to the elements anyway. All kinds of critters and stuff down there. But we go to the lake area where the bodies were. There's actually an underwater lake there, freshwater lake. It was perfect for when it was a mushroom mine. They could use it for watering the mushroom. And we were there, and something was echoing in that room, like whistling. There were only 3 of us in there from the team, and there's a whistling going on that still haunts me. I wake up some nights hearing that, going, "Wait a minute, that's." And it wasn't. I was like, "Are you all hearing this?" And they're all like, "Yeah, we're hearing this." And we're like, "Who's in here? It's private property." There was a police officer with us who was, observing us. And oh man, that one sticks with me the most of anything. And again, we had some equipment. We got the recordings of it, but it's pitch dark, so there's nothing on camera. But we have the recordings of the whistling. So.
Right, and a question from Sober. Hi, Mark. Are there any cases that you have proven fake or different to what the original story is?
Oh yeah, I've got a dark one. If we're okay going down a little bit of a dark path.
Yeah, no problem.
Okay, so back when I was running the haunted house, there was a local legend in Tampa Bay called Mini Lights. And depending on who you asked, if you said, it's kind of like Bloody Mary, say Mini Lights 3 times, and these green lights will chase you. It didn't really sound very scary. I threw it into the haunted house. I made a little effect with 3 little green lights that would run around. But as I was telling it, I put it up on our website. That's where I would post all these legends, on the old Hellview Cemetery website. And somebody said, "Oh, you got that wrong." And I'm like, "Okay." And they're like, No, it's Mini Lights, and her name is Mini Lightning, and she's the voodoo queen of St. Petersburg. And if you call her name, she sends her gator boys to steal your children.
Oh,
and I'm like, whoa, that escalated quickly. So she's got little alligator men in the sewers. So alligators in the sewers, like classic urban legend. And they come and steal your children. Okay, that's classic urban legend stuff. And Mini Lightning, she's the voodoo queen. She summons the lightning. That's why Tampa Bay Lightning it's the lightning capital of the world. And they named their hockey team after that. And she also hates Marie Laveau in New Orleans. So she steers the Hurricanes from Tampa to New Orleans. So, okay, it all makes sense. It's very folklore-y. I love it. I think that's amazing story. And so I'm writing it, and I'm like, but where's the real story behind this? So I'm digging into it. I'm in the St. Petersburg Museum of History. I'm looking up a different story at the time. And the answer to Mini Lightning and the Gator Boys, beware of Mini Lights. She'll steal your children. It fell into my lap. It was a fan, one of those little, like you hold and cool yourself off with, in a tourist attraction from the 30s that was in Tampa Bay. And it was an alligator farm. And it on the fan had the ad for their lead attraction, which was 2 little African-American kids being chased by alligators.
Oh.
And suddenly it all starts piecing together in my head, and I start figuring it out. I start doing more research, and sure enough, what it was the alligator farm to entertain the tourists. Because if you've ever seen an alligator in the wild, they just lay there. They don't do anything. If you go to any of the tourist attractions, go see an alligator, they're just laying there. Yeah, they will attack you, but only if they're hungry and if they're, appetized. But 9 times out of 10, they just lay there. They're not really interesting. So to entertain tourists, they would go into the south side of town, and they would kidnap children and then throw them into this alligator pit to entertain tourists, usually African-American kids, kids nobody wanted, all that. So beware of many lights. Her gator boys will steal your children. It was beware of the men with lights. They would go out with lights looking for kids at dark, and they are the gator boys, and they will steal your children. So yes, it wasn't
That's where it came
a ghostly thing. It wasn't an urban legend. It wasn't a voodoo queen. It was something terrible, and it was a warning to protect your children. So yes, that we've proven some other things fake, but that was probably the scariest one.
Yeah, I can imagine. So, yeah, this is from Rebecca. Mark, do you believe in other dimensions? Do you think some of the strange phenomena can pop in and out of them as they please?
I do think there's more on heaven and earth than is dreamt of in your philosophy. So I like to call it preternatural stuff we don't understand yet. That was Shirley Jackson from Haunting of Hill House. She called it all that, and that's what I think. And I do think we're learning that other dimensions are out there. Parallel universes are probably real now. Scientists are saying, and that might explain Mandela effects. That might explain those weird moments where you go to a town and suddenly you're like, wait a minute, this was not the way I remembered it, and things like that. We get a lot on Eerie Travels. We get a lot of listener stories and listener emails and things like that. And one of the common ones we've been getting is where somebody has some just weird like experience where they went to a town that they grew up in, found their favorite old restaurant, went in, had an amazing time, go back home, get their wife and kids and say, hey, I got to take you back to this place. It's just like when I grew up. And they go back there and it's completely different. The place they went to is bulldozed, hasn't been opened in years. What's going on and all that. And that also ties into, Bigfoot, skunk apes, where the tracks just stop and why they seem to just disappear sometimes and things like that. Lake monsters, Loch Ness monster. We have one guy that talks to us. He's convinced that these are ghosts of dinosaurs and Bigfoot's ghost of caveman. And that's why that we can't get them on camera. Why would they disappear? Why it's so hard to do this, and that it's all extra dimensional. And it's, as we learn more about science, the more we learn we don't know about science, right? That we're learning about dark matter and we're learning about all these other things that makes Einstein stuff work because it didn't work before. And now we're going, wait a minute, okay, maybe there's more to this. And I think that's what all this is going to be at some point. Yeah, we're going to, like we were talking before the show, I think we said it's at some point, one domino is going to fall and then the rest will fall and it'll all be like, oh, why did we not know this? We were idiots, like gravity. For generations, we didn't understand gravity. So we just pretended it didn't exist. Then we figured out how it works. And now same thing.
Yeah, I know. Another one. Another question from Sober. Just seen that. Hi, Mark. Do you share the belief that all different types of unexplainable, i.e., ghosts, cryptids, UFOs, are all from the same source?
I don't think the same source, but again, I think we're missing pieces of a puzzle, and I think some of those pieces do cross over. I think I'm not sure. UFOs, I've discovered a lot of UFO stuff is military and isn't as alien as we'd like to hope. It's just advanced science. But then I found some that I'm like, okay, that doesn't make sense. Ghosts, again, I don't know. I don't know what they are. They're things people see. They're things people experience. I've seen some weird stuff. I've experienced some weird stuff. I can't tell you what it is. Cryptids, I think some fall into the alien animal syndrome, which is they're not where they're supposed to be. These are things that shouldn't be here, but are, like the big cats, and that shouldn't be in the Appalachians. Like the big black cats are all gone from North America, but people see them every day. We get more and more reports, and it's not the Florida Panther coming all the way up here. But and then I think there's other cryptids that are kind of as they call it over here, the woo factor, the spooky factor. It's
Mm.
that they don't quite fit the natural animal. I'm not one of those guys that says Bigfoot is just an a hominid in the woods that we haven't discovered yet. But I'm also not in the type that says no, he's 100% extra dimensional and pops in and out of doorways from other dimensions. But then I'm not totally against that either. The Cherokee talked to them around here in my area of Smoky Mountains for generations. They traded with them. They have stories about them and their tribes, and that the ones with the golden eyes are nice and the ones with the red eyes are mean and will eat you. So whatever you do, if you do see a Bigfoot in the areas, take a quick look. If it has red eyes, you might want to run. So
tell us a little about the curse of Robert the Doll.
Okay, so I did that documentary. I was asked to do it because I'd written about him in Erie, Florida, and he's a doll down in Key West. He's 110 years old now. God bless him. I know in Europe there's dolls 1,000 times older, but he's actually made by the Steiff company in Germany that invented the teddy bear. A few years after that. And he was one of 6 made for a window display. So it was a unique kind of thing. And his family bought him. His family was very wealthy. And at this point, Key West was probably one of the richest cities in America. And his father brought it home for him and gave it to the boy named Robert Eugene Otto. And Robert loved the doll. It was like the My Buddy of his day. It was the same height, size as him. He immediately gives it his clothes and he starts playing with it. And he gives up all his other toys. But the minute he gets it, bad stuff starts happening. Things breaking, unusual things. The servants are like having all kinds of like, we're done with this. And so his mom goes to him and says, now Robert, you've got to stop whatever you're doing and behave. And he's like, oh, I'm not doing it. Robert's doing it. And she's like, you're Robert. And he's like, no, I'm going to go by my middle name, Eugene. The doll wants my name, Robert. So I'm giving it to him. And that way we don't have any more confusion. And nowadays we'd have given that kid some Ritalin and we wouldn't have a story. But back then she's like, okay. So for basically 100 years, this doll terrorizes the family. And after a while, it starts terrorizing everybody else who inherits the house and who inherits the doll.
Right.
And he's becomes the real life inspiration for Chucky. The writer of Child's Play,
the movie,
the writer of Child's Play was inspired by the movie Demonic Toys, which the guy who wrote Demonic Toys was actually inspired by Robert the Doll story. So it's not really, but it's kind of transitive. But anyway, that becomes this infamous story. And eventually he winds up in this museum down in Key West, and they don't know what to do with him. They're like, the lady who gives it to him is like, this is the most haunted doll in the world. Take it. I don't want anything to do with it. And that's it. Sits there. And they don't know what to display. They don't know what to do with him. But Robert lets himself known. He wants people to see him. He starts breaking things and messing with things in this museum and messing with the employees and stuff. So they finally put him on display. And that's where the rules come from, is they start learning the rules because the way things act, people start taking pictures of him and their cameras break, their digital cameras break, their old cameras break. So suddenly became the rule. Don't you ask permission before you take his picture. Be nice to him. And then all the curse starts coming about from people not following these rules. And that's when somebody wrote him a letter and said, I'm sorry, I don't know what I did, Robert, but I apologize. And then that triggered a flood once they figured that out. That if you think you've been cursed by Robert the Doll, write him a letter. So they get literally hundreds of letters a month. They get presidents wrote him. They've had people blame everything on him, from car crashes to airplane crashes to lost luggage to failed marriages, failed businesses, death. And you can just spend a day reading his letters. That's my favorite thing to do when I go down to visit Robert, is to read his letters. One of my favorites, I've memorized it because I love it so much. And it's Dear Sir Robert, I like to call him Sir. I'm sorry I made fun of your leather face and called you stupid. You are actually very smart, and leather is very nice for a face, so you are very handsome. Please remove your curse. I get the message. Please fix my eye, my Xbox, and my marriage.
Oh, God.
And I loved he put them in that order.
Oh, yeah. I like it. Yeah, in that order.
Yeah. So we filmed that for Discovery Channel. And like I said, I had my issues afterwards, but a lot of fun. And Stunt Robert is now an official Muppet for the Jim Henson Company. So
is it still happening today then?
Yes, you can go visit Robert in Key West anytime. If you go down to Key West, they do Robert the Doll tour, and you can spend a few hours in that museum. That museum has a few other haunted artifacts. It's an art museum, but it's in an old Civil War fort, so it's already got a little bit of history anyway. But Robert, you can spend some alone time with Robert. Just make sure you ask his permission and make sure you say hello and goodbye. That's the rules, and treat him nice. But the documentary is on Amazon and Discovery, so it's on Max if you have Max, or and you can find it. Curse of Robert the Doll. That's what I did. So
yeah,
I'm a talking head on it. I look a little different. They dress me up nice for those.
What do you think shadow people are?
Oh, see, I think goes back to that first one I saw. I think it's something we don't understand. I don't think it's a ghost. I think these are some sort of, especially with the Hat Man phenomena. I get emails from people all over the world, and some of them don't even know what the heck the Hat Man is or the shadow people are, but they've had these experiences. They've had these dreams. They've had these lucid dreams where the things show up, or they've had other experiences. One of my favorites, I've got to say, it's a little different, but I think it is similar. Is a family in Pennsylvania. They wrote me. They are a moonshine family. They like making fine beverages in an area that you're not allowed to. So that's what, for those UK folks, moonshine is our distilled joy. So, but anyway, they wrote me that they were having some bad financial times. This is right before the pandemic, and they were already in a bad way. So they decided to try to kick up the recipe. And so they go to Granny's old book of recipes, and they find some roots and some other things they can add. And they don't realize Granny's book, she was what we call a granny witch, or an Appalachian witch.
Oh,
so
yeah.
She knew the stuff that could feed you and do all this stuff. She knew what roots will cure a stomach ache and will cure this and cure that. Well, she had some stuff, then they put it in the moonshine, and man, it was a popular batch. They said they were just so happy. It was working great, and it was going to save the family. So they brought the family over for a big celebration to try the new batch. And as they're all drinking it, they start seeing things out of the corner of their eyes, like shadow figures and shadow shapes. And they start convinced that this is, it's rats or something's going to get in the corn, get in the supplies, and that's going to shut them down. So they, the moonshine and guns, not a great combination, but hey, it's Eastern Appalachia. So they they start going with their guns to try to catch these things. And finally, one of them catches a thing in a grain sack. And he says when he looked in, it looked like Venom from Marvel Comics, like its head, just this oily black rolling thing with eyes and teeth, just thousands of teeth. And I guess his brother reached in to try to grab it, and it almost took his hand off.
Oh
And so
God.
now the police are called in because they've got a guy in injury and all this stuff. And the kid is just like, it bites, it bites, it bites, and he's screaming. And so they think, the little budding chemist who made all this, he's convinced that something in those roots or vegetables allowed him to see things that are always there, that these things are always there. And maybe that's what we're tying into when we see these shadow people, when we see these shadow things, that these things are all there. But when we can see them when we have certain parts of our brain activated. So that's a terrifying thought.
So what happened to the drink?
Well, that's the thing. They all got shut down by the police. They but it was funny. Like 2 weeks later, he emails me back saying, "Hey, we're back in business. So if you want to come by and try some, let me know." And I'm like, "No, it's okay. I'm good." But it's funny. I do get letters from him occasionally saying, "Oh, we're down again. Oh, we're back." But that kid who it bites. He is actually under care in a facility because he cannot sleep with the lights out. He is terrified of the dark. And
that's sad, isn't it?
And that just tells you, you mess with fire, you poke the bear, bad stuff happens.
Yeah, how strange is that?
Yeah, that one terrifies me more than most of my other stuff because I'm just like, if that's always there, there's a reason I keep my lights on.
Well, I did a program with Andrew Collins. I think it was about 4 years ago. When we finished the show, I was on Beacon of Light Radio then, and Susan, the producer, said, "Did you hear that voice halfway through?" I went, "No." What came through the computer? And Andrew was talking about interdimensional, and this voice came through and said, "Explain it."
Oh, yeah.
And the voice came through. I had it analysed through somebody who works with Robbie Williams, the singer, the English singer.
Yeah.
In his studio. And he said, "Well, it's not coming from the studio. It's not coming from his end. It's coming from that room. I am sat here now."
Oh, wow.
At back of me somewhere. We don't know. I had Paul sat at side of me, and he said it's coming from that room. Well,
that's
and it was plain as daylight.
Yep. We've had a few episodes. We've had a few episodes of Eerie Travels where we've talked to people from haunted locations, and occasionally something weird comes through and we catch it. Well, our editor will go, "Hey guys, you should hear this." I'm not a big fan of the spirit boxes or some of the modern electronic ghost hunting stuff. That stuff kind of turns me off because, hey, if you've got a thing that's just randomly flipping radio channels, you're talking to static. And it's the other thing I hate is like the flashlight method. I don't know if you're familiar with that, where they take a flashlight and loosen it so it's just enough connection to bring it on, and then the ghosts make the light turn on and off and off. No, you're talking to humidity. It's science.
Yes,
you're talking to humidity and vibration. But that said, like I said, I think there's stuff out there, and I do think Edison and some of the early inventors, when they were first inventing things, Alexander Graham Bell, when he invented the phone, he heard voices on the line. There was nobody on the line but him. He's the only one who had a damn phone. and he was convinced he was working on a phone line to talk to the dead.
I think if we could fine tune some things, we'd hear more. Yep. It's just, 100%. It's like tuning a radio into it. Also, when you get a station, But I wonder if we could do that, I'm sure we'd hear more things.
Yeah, I mean, we know number stations and things like that that the government uses on bands that we're not supposed to listen to and all that. But still, I think there's more out there. I think again, if we could just get some real science behind it, some money into it, I think the scientists would come, and that's where we need. Honestly, it's not curing cancer, but it's something good that still needs to be done too. So,
Of course it is, yeah. Yeah, we've about come to the end of the show. Where can people get in touch with you, and
all right.
where can they get your books?
All right. Well, eerietravels.com is our website that has our links to. We're on all the major networks for our podcast. We're on Spotify, iTunes, Amazon, all that, Audible, and all that. But if you go to eerietravels.com, you can listen to us there. We're on YouTube as well. That also has a contact us where you can send me emails and stuff. That's where we get our listener stories and our listener tales. But also, you can order our books there. You can order our books anywhere. You can get them Amazon and the usual places. But if you order from us direct, we'll sign them. My wife's the illustrator. She'll draw a little something nice in them for you. Our new book, Eerie Travels Presents Dark Side of the Smokies, is coming a little later this year. Should be out around Christmas time, but pre-orders will be up soon from there too. And then that also is where I'll be appearances wise. I do a lot of convention appearances, and if I have any more documentaries or anything coming soon that I'm not allowed to talk about yet, but there might be one, just throwing that out there, because NDAs, you gotta love those. But if you keep an eye on there, as soon as I'm allowed to talk about it, I will. Believe me, you can't shut me up.
Tell us about your podcast.
Eerie Travels is on twice a week. We're on we're on, like I said, every major network and YouTube. We do live shows on YouTube, usually out of the US. It's not a regular schedule. It's whenever the guests want to come on. We do once a month, we do a live listener tales and a live listener questions episode. But eerietravels.com has all the times and everything. But they go out on Tuesdays and Fridays.
Very good. I know Rebecca just said, thank you, Mark. It's been very interesting.
Well, thank you for the questions,
Okay,
Rebecca.
thanks, Mark and Bob. Another great show.
Oh, yeah.
So
It was a lot of fun. It was an honor to be here. So,
and it's always nice when people ask questions as well, besides
yep.
the host. Yeah, Joanne just said, great show again tonight. Yeah, well, thank you so much for coming on the show. It's been absolutely wonderful. It's always nice to get another new guest on, what I call a new contact as well.
Yes, definitely. And hope to hear from all of you. Please give my show a chance. Give us a listen. We've got close to 200 episodes backlogged for you to listen to, and or you can watch them on YouTube. And then we did everything from Cocaine Bear's true story to the Curse of Robert the Doll and more. So you'll get a lot deeper dives on some of that. So
yeah, Diane just said, lovely guest. Thank you, Bob and Mark. Good night, everyone.
No.
Yeah. No, thank you. Yeah, it's been interesting. And if you get your new book out before Christmas, we can have you back on again.
Oh, love to. And I'll bring Eric on, my co-host. She keeps me straight and answers the questions. When I get on a rant and I just keep telling stories, she's the one who says, hang on, because she's still new to all this. I mean, she's still got experiences, but she's the reason the show works so good is she's the one who can ask the questions that you're thinking and shut me down a little bit and go, hey, wait, you're going too far. Did you just mention this?
Well, that's good. That's good. You've got somebody else who'll slow you down a little bit and then think, oh yeah, I could have told that and I could tell this.
Yep. So yeah, this is the first book I'm doing with her as well. So it'll be fun. I think it'll read. My other ones are all basically folk tales and legends and the history behind them. So Erie, Florida, Freaky Florida, Creepy Florida, and Erie, Appalachia. So
brilliant.
Most of other stuff's out of print, so you can't find the old stuff. So good luck.
Yeah, and I will. I will go on your show sometime in the future as well.
Please, please, we're waiting to have you. We'd love to
Thank
talk to
you.
you, and we
Thank
can
you.
record ahead for you. We do it your schedule. So
Yeah. Oh, great. Thank you for that. Thank you for that. I'll just finish the show.
all right, gang. My one line I always say at the end of my